Part 121. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1201. Elder Tu Gong is going on a long trip. At the gate of the sect, a Danja disciple asked curiously. Because Xianxia ordered that the monks above nascent soul within the sect must practice with peace of mind except for necessary matters. I'll be back soon after I go out. Why, do you care about my elder's affairs? Mujiwa coldly snorted, and the aura of a superior person came out from his body. During the pill formation period, he was sweating coldly and fell to his knees. I don't dare. Snort. The wooden incarnation flashed and disappeared directly from the place with teleportation. After Jidankai stood up, he took out a jade talisman and reported the matter to his deacon. Soon, the news spread inside the sect. Hearing that someone violated the sect master's order, all the nascent soul elders looked at each other. They couldn't understand why someone would violate the sect master's order. Should we wait until the sect master comes out of seclusion to discuss this matter? The sect master has gone to the holy land of the martial arts field, and we can't contact her. Half an hour later, Mu Incarnation was already far away from the mountain gate of Five Elements sect, and then he released more than 10 people on the isolated island. Long Wu, I leave everything to you. When saying goodbye, Mu Jianying also took out a formation diagram, which was the formation diagram of the Balian sect's mountain protecting formation. They are proficient in the 12-star formation diagram, and the 100 refiners sect's mountain protecting formation still needs to be modified. Don't worry, we will. All the demon saints were filled with righteous indignation. Long Wu had told them why they had the purpose of this operation, and they gritted their teeth with hatred after learning about the tragic events in the Five Elements sect. They used to be the demon emperors who were in charge of a clan. Killing each other within the clan was intolerable. How could such things still happen among the human clan? Bon voyage. Mu turned into a fist and everyone left. It's a long way to go to Balian section. The earlier they go there to arrange the arrangements, the higher the success rate will be. After seeing them all disappear from sight, Mu turned around and returned to the section. Ignoring the salutes during the Dan formation period, he returned to the cave that originally belonged to Tu Gong. This matter. I wanted to practice for a while, but as soon as I closed my eyes, my mind was filled with the experiences of those girls and children, and I couldn't calm down no matter what. Forget it, let's go find some monks in the Dan formation stage and see how they are practicing. Mu Jianying stood up and walked towards the outside of the cave. The abnormality in his body started from the pill formation stage. What is produced is not a golden elixir, but a seed of chaos. Although he had guessed that the reason for the chaos species was because he had cultivated the power of chaos from the beginning, he would feel a little uncomfortable if he didn't find out something about this problem. Of course, it is easy to solve it, as long as you find a person in the Dan formation stage and check the golden elixir in their body. After much deliberation, Mu Jiawa decided to go deep into the sect, where there would not be anyone in charge. With his own identity, he could just find someone to visit his danshan. After looking at the Danji stage, let's take a look at the nascent soul in the nascent soul stage. The biggest change is the Chaos Lotus. Although, he was extremely sure that there was absolutely no Chaos Lotus in the bodies of these nascent soul cultivators. But even without a glance, Mu Jiawa felt uneasy. In addition, you also need to understand how they practice. Xianxia issued a death order, which to a certain extent facilitated his actions. But he didn't know that in the sect master's hall, a group of nascent souls were waiting to report him. The only problem is that Xianxia entered the fragmented space to practice, and they didn't know when she would come out. They could only wait outside, thinking of increasing the favor of the sect leader by making snitches. Following the original path to the depths of the sect, Mu Incarnation soon encountered a similar scene. However, this time he paid more attention. Compared with what I saw before, there were a lot more girls with children on the road at this time. It seems that these children should have relatively strong talents. They have practiced for a week and then come out for a walk, otherwise, they are all in the small courtyard on the other side of the mountain wall. I'm afraid they will be suffocated. Mujiawa observed for a moment and had this conjecture in his mind. At this time, the Danja who first saw Mu Avatar coming, walked up to Mu Avatar again. "Senior, who are you looking for?" Mujiawa nodded slightly, recognized this person, and said calmly, "What is your name? Do you hold an important position here?" "Senior, my name is Tu Duduo, and this is the deacon in charge of this place." "Apply too much?" Mujiawa narrowed his eyes. "Yes, senior, this name was given by the elder." Tu Tuajuo lowered his head. Mujiawa suddenly realized that he remembered that the boy in the valley said that he had no name. It seems that only those who have cultivated to a certain level can truly join the Five Elements sect, and their names are randomly chosen by those in charge of higher realms. However, the nascent soul stage that I saw on the mountain wall before was probably the elder in charge here. He had some concerns in his mind and said, "Take me around and take a look." "Yes, senior." Tu Duduo breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know who Mujiawa was, but he could feel the aura of Mujiawa, which was far beyond the nascent soul stage, so he didn't dare to neglect him at all. At the same time, he did not dare to call him elder, for fear of calling him the wrong position and making Mujiawa angry, so he was worthy of being a senior. Because of this, he didn't dare to have any questions. He just walked along the road and introduced the situation here to Mujiawa. Half an hour later, they came to the edge of the mountain wall again. It was already past noon, and there were no cultivating children in the single-family wooden houses in the courtyards. Only the girls could be seen busy cleaning up the courtyards. "How long have they lived here?" Mujiawa asked calmly. "Senior, this is the East District. Those from the East District have been here for no more than 10 years, and they all gave birth to their first child." Tu Duduo said respectfully. "Since there is the East District, then there are also South, North and West Districts?" Along the way, he guessed the meaning of these people's existence from some of Tu Duduo's words. The purpose of the Five Elements sect in trapping these girls is actually to have children. In itself, the monks in the sect all have 5 spiritual roots, so if they are combined with a girl with 5 spiritual roots, the probability of giving birth to a child with 5 spiritual roots is extremely high. At the same time, this place has also become a place for nascent soul monks to have fun. Of course, they won't come here often, but once the number of children cannot keep up, the sect will issue an order and assign some nascent souls to come and spread the seeds. If Mujianing had never been to the valley, he would not know that the Five Elements sect would take some children with 5 spiritual roots to refine the 5 spiritual elixirs, and he would not care much about such matters. But every time he closed his eyes, the boy's innocent yet resigned expression always appeared in his mind. This shows that this incident has affected his Taoist heart. If this matter is not eliminated, he may not be able to continue practicing. And in his opinion, such a thing is against the will of heaven. "What about other districts?" Mujiawa asked calmly. "The southern district is 20 years, the west district is 30 years, and the north district is more special. The female cultivators there have already reached the foundation building stage, and they are under the direct jurisdiction of the elders. This so-called year is calculated from the time these women gave birth to their first child." He secretly guessed that the female foundation building cultivator had a lifespan of more than 100 years. Come to think of it, the Five Elements sect really wants to squeeze these female cultivators dry. From the fact that the girls here practice every day, it can be seen that they still want to escape from the control of the Five Elements sect. As everyone knows, even if they continue to practice, there will be another abyss waiting for them. It's no wonder that in the entire Five Elements sect, there is not a single female cultivator above the Dan formation stage. The longevity of the pill-forming stage is hundreds of years, and I am afraid that no female cultivator can reach that level. Because the longer you practice, the longer you will be tortured. Moreover, without the state of mind that is like still water, it is impossible to build the foundation of the Taoist platform. As said, the female cultivators with 5 spiritual roots are doomed here, and their path to immortality is a dead end. Sad. Mu turned around, and Tu Duduo quickly followed. He could feel that Mu was extremely unhappy at this time, and he didn't even dare to express his anger. Although I felt strange, I didn't dare to ask more questions. This is something that everyone in the 5 Elements sect knows, but the monks above nascent soul never care about this. It is a normal thing for them. Although the spiritual world is vast, how can it be so easy to find the seedlings of the 5 spiritual roots? It's better to create someone from your own sect, saving time and effort. Moreover, if the base is sufficient and there is a steady stream of production, we will definitely be able to find seedlings with extraordinary talents. When the time comes, it can be used by their 5 Elements sect. The 5 Elements sect, the 5 Elements sect, what a good plan. It's a pity that you met me. Wooden Avatar clenched his fists again. By the way, after a stick of incense, Mujiawa suddenly stopped and asked, "Do you know where those children with poor talents have gone?" "I don't know about this villain. His position is too low and he is not the elder's confidant. The elder never told us." Tu Duduo trembled all over and said quickly, "It's not like he hasn't asked before, because he once had many friends who were taken away because they couldn't practice for a week within a certain period of time. There has been no news since. He finally stood out, practiced to the point of building the foundation, and then slowly reached the point of forming the elixir, and took the position of person in charge here. But the people he still knew were gone. As for his biological mother, due to the year, she moved from the East District to the South District, then to the West District, and finally to the North District. In the past, he could go back and take a look. But after arriving in the North District, it seemed like heaven and earth were separated forever. Tu's redundant expression suddenly became a little lonely. At this time, several children walked towards Tu Duduo. When they saw Tu Duduo, they all spread their legs and ran towards Tu Duduo with smiles on their faces. "Uncle Duoduo, I used your method, and now I can practice for a week with just 1 stick of incense. Uncle Duoduo, can you teach us how to make it faster?" "Uncle Duoduo, my mother said the same thing, when will you teach us again?" These children turned a blind eye to the wooden incarnations on the side, chattering around the redundant edges, and were extremely noisy. Tu Duan's face was very ugly. He used his spiritual power a little, separated them from his side, and shouted in a low voice, "Don't run around outside, go home quickly." Unexpectedly, Mujiawa suddenly spoke, with no expression on his face. "Show me your practice skills." I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1202. Mujiawa remembered that he didn't have to put too much effort into cultivating at that time. The 5 Elements of Chaos Sutra is like tailor-made for monks with 5 spiritual roots. As long as you understand the meaning of the beginning of the technique, you can basically get started. It's nothing more than the speed of refining spiritual power. But the problem is that there is almost no threshold for the chi refining period. At that time, I was crossing the river by feeling for the stones, and with the short-term spiritual power provided by the red sweet potato fruit, I was able to see the words on the exercises. And these children are almost all taught by hand. According to what Tu Duduo said before, their cultivation was taught by those girls, whom Yuji had seen. These girls were also monks, and they all had spiritual power. Not to mention how good their teachings are, but at least they can help children avoid detours. But why? Unless, the 5 Elements of Chaos Sutra they practice is different from their own. Hearing Xianxia's soft drink, Duduo was frightened to the point of hairiness all over his body and said quickly, "Senior, the children only know a little bit, please let them go." Mujiawa frowned slightly and said, "I'm not asking for guilt. Why are you so panicked? Senior, this." Seeing that he was hesitant to speak, Mujiawa didn't know there was something fishy about it, so he couldn't help but snorted and said, "Get out of the way, otherwise don't blame me for being rude." Duduo couldn't help but clenched his fists, but quickly relaxed them. Because he knew very well that in front of his seniors, he was like an egg hitting a stone, and it was tantamount to seeking death. Mujiawa naturally saw his actions, but ignored him. Instead, he smiled and said to the children, "You guys try to practice, and these spirit stones will be yours later." Now he has spiritual stones with him, which he obtained from the medicine master's ring. As he passed by his hand, there were already several middle-grade spiritual stones, and each child could get one. This scene made Duduo confused. "Senior, what are you?" "It's none of your business," Mujiawa said calmly, "I just want to see how talented these children are." "Why, do you want to take care of what I do?" "Don't dare." Duduo quickly lowered his head, not daring to take another look. He was originally afraid that Mu incarnation would hurt them, but this move was for the spirit stone, so it shouldn't be possible, right? A group of children's eyes were shining. They could be considered monks after all. Although they were only in the chi refining stage and their realms were uneven, they had heard of the effects of spirit stones even if they had never used them before. "Senior, I practice the fastest." A boy with messy hair, who looked to be the largest, wiped his nose, then sat cross-legged on the ground, with his 5 hearts raised to the sky, and began to practice the method of refining chi. In the air, spiritual energy began to flow, rushing towards the boy's body. The other children were not willing to be left behind. Although they were a step slower, they still sat down quickly. Mu incarnation stayed still, with his back to Duduo, and quietly used the shattering void spiritual eye technique. With his current state, it was extremely simple to see through the movement of the boy's spiritual power in the chi refining stage. After a few breaths, his brows furrowed slightly. Because he discovered that the way these children's spiritual power passed through the 9 meridians was completely different from what he had practiced before. Could it be said that his 5 elements of Chaos Sutra is also different? He stepped aside and turned to look at Duduo. "Come and practice." "Senior." Duduo was stunned, wondering what went wrong. "Why, you want spiritual stones too?" Mujiawa raised his eyebrows. "Don't dare." Duduo was shocked. He also imitated the children and sat down cross-legged and began to practice chi. Compared to them, Duduo is still in the elixir-forming stage after all, and it only takes half a stick of incense to run for a whole day. He opened his eyes, just in time to meet the Mu incarnation's void-breaking spirit eye technique, as if his whole body had been seen through, and he suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. "Who did you learn the cultivation method from?" "I learned it from my mother. The subsequent cultivation method, I figured it out myself." In this atmosphere, Duduo did not dare to hide anything. He was afraid that if he made a false statement, the other party would see through it. "You're trying to figure it out on your own?" "How to figure it out?" Mujiawa's brows deepened, and he realized that he had made a mistake. "I thought that people from the 5 Elements sect would have a copy of the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra in their hands from the beginning of their cultivation. Even if they didn't have it, no matter how bad it was, they would still have a corresponding master to guide them." But the unnecessary words made him wake up from a dream. In the mortal world, this is a technique known as the Book of Heaven. Even if there are conspiracies by the Immortals in the immortal realm, you can still ascend to the immortal realm properly. How could such a technique be spread casually among these low-level monks? So, the 5 Elements sect uses the method of raising gu. Only those disciples who stand out through their own cultivation will eventually become the inner disciples of the Five Elements sect. Children like these, including the excess paint, are most likely just free range. The only person to blame was himself. The first person from the Five Elements sect he met was Tu Cheng. Being so arrogant and domineering caused Mujiawa's understanding of the Five Elements sect to be biased. Who could have imagined that the depths of the Five Elements sect would be like this? Call. He took a deep breath and said, "At what level did you start exploring?" Back to the seniors, it was from the foundation establishment stage. After these ordinary children have cultivated to the 12th level of Qi refining, the sect will give them the foundation establishment pill. Only the disciples who succeed in the foundation establishment will escape being kicked out of the section destiny. Drive him out? A cold light flashed in Mujiawa's eyes, and he was sure that a monk without the 5 spiritual roots could leave the Five Elements sect alive. Those children, if they fail to build the foundation, will definitely stay in the Five Elements sect in the end. This is clearly a cannibal sect. The spiritual world is so vast, and he has encountered many casual cultivators in the spiritual world. But I have never met or heard of a casual cultivator with 5 spiritual roots. It can be seen from this that there will be no disciples in the Five Elements sect who will be kicked out at all. Moreover, it is very likely that the pharmacist has refined a special 5-spirit pill for those who are in the tribulation period. Then, the ancestors who transcended the tribulation period also existed. The Five Elements sect, is really a cancer in the spiritual world. Mu Zhenhua took a deep breath, then took out a handful of spirit stones from his arms and threw them over, warning, "Don't talk about today's events to anyone. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." The spirit stone seemed to be hot to the touch, and no matter how stupid Tu Zhenhua was, he knew that he seemed to be involved in some whirlpool. Mujiawa seemed to have no idea what was going on here, and he was suspicious. But I didn't dare to ask. Gritting his teeth, he knelt on the ground. "Senior, please make the decision for these children." Mujiawa sneered, "What, you want me to save them from the Five Elements sect?" How could he not see that too was superfluous? Perhaps because he came here like this, he secretly taught these children better methods of refining Qi. But the real situation is that even if all the children can speed up their cultivation, the pharmacist will send one child there every month. In the end, the competition is just the speed of cultivation. Senior, you must be different from other elders. It has been more than 100 years since I was born in the Five Elements sect. But no inner sect elder has ever come here. That's why I dare to make such a request. Although we are monks, we are not as good as dogs, and we have never left the sect. Growing up, we only knew that we should eat from the sect, use the sect, and serve the sect. But apart from cultivation, we don't know what hope is at all. You want hope? Mujiawa sighed, "Why don't I want to give you hope, but I can't do it yet. The spiritual world is now in chaos. I thought that only the Five Elements sect was the dominant one. But when I arrived in the spiritual world, I realized that the Five Elements sect was only on the surface. Hidden in the darkness are sects such as the Jiden sect, as well as various evil cultivators scattered everywhere without a trace. Moreover, judging from what he knows now, there is even an invisible hand from the fairy world controlling Huang Mingxing. Not to mention, how many big hands are there? He is helpless and can only do his best. Apply excess. The villain is here. To excess and looked up. All you can do is treat what happened today as if you didn't see it. I can't guarantee the rest. Do you remember it? To put it bluntly, applying excess paint has no effect on him at all. Even when he wanted to find out where the skills were different, these people were useless. We can only start from the inner disciples. But seriously, is it really that important to investigate or not? Even if it is found out, can I stop practicing the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra that I have been practicing? This is impossible. Mujiawa suddenly realized that he seemed to be on a path of no return. Did this Immortals arrangement really leave him with no way out? He glanced at the children who were still immersed in cultivation and left without a care. I hope these spirit stones will be of some help to them. As for applying too much, if I have the chance, I'll help if I can. But at least it's not appropriate now. After watching Xianxia leave, Duduo's face became even more lonely. Looking at the children behind him who were still practicing, he chose to stay. More than half an hour later, the children woke up one after another. When they saw that Xianxia was no longer there, they all asked curiously, "Uncle Duo, is that senior gone?" "Uncle Duo, this senior is so powerful. Is he a senior from the inner sect?" "Uncle Duo, I must practice hard and join the inner sect." "Yes, my mother said that only by joining the inner sect can we live a good life." Looking at the hope appearing on the children's faces, Duo couldn't bear to be discouraged. Inner door. At least you have to cultivate to the peak of the late stage of pill formation. I have been here for more than 100 years, but I am still in the late stage of pill formation. How can it be so easy? Come on, you can definitely do it. Duo picked up the spirit stones, added more than 100 yuan given to him by Mu incarnation, and gave 10 yuan to each child. Wow, I have a spiritual stone. I want to give half of it to my mother so that she won't have to work so hard. I want to give it too. Mom works too hard. Not only does she have to practice, but she also has to cook for us. I want to give half to my mother, and half to Xiaohe's mother. Xiaohe was taken away, and I heard he will never come back. And yesterday, the elder took Xiaohe away. My mother was injured. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1203. You guys. Duduo shook his head, but didn't know where to start. Tanjianwiji, they are still very kind-hearted. He didn't know if Xiaohe was still alive, but he did know that Xiaohe would never come back. Because of this situation, he watched for more than 100 years. There are almost no monks of his age. But have you forgotten what I taught you? After sighing, Duduo put on a straight face. Uncle Duo, what you said is that wealth should not be exposed. The big boy reacted immediately. The other children were startled and quickly put the spirit stones in their arms. That's right, wealth must not be exposed. You should take out these spiritual stones for cultivation at the beginning of every month. Uncle Duan can't help too many people. Remember, he also had troubles that he couldn't express. Because he helped them, there were other children who were in more danger. All he could do was make himself feel at ease. He had no intention of using the extra spirit stones given by Mu incarnation. As he became the deacon here, there was no pressure to survive. It is absolutely possible to end one's life in good condition. Okay, let's all go back. Although these children were not the smartest, they were the most obedient to him, so Duduo sent them back. But he stayed where he was, with a myriad of thoughts in his mind. Until, a malicious voice sounded. Hey, isn't this a redundant brother? Why are you alone in this small forest? Are you trying to achieve enlightenment? While they were talking, several Danja people came over from the other side of the grove. Whether I understand the Tao or not, what does it have to do with you? Duduo snorted coldly, obviously at odds with them. If Mu is here incarnate, he will definitely recognize that these are the deacons who took Xiaohe to Medicine Master Valley. Hey, Brother Defa, a Jadan period man with inverted triangular eyes who didn't look like a good person said to the leader, he may know that he is redundant, so he doesn't dare to go outside. That's right. Just because you're the outer deacon, there's nothing we can do against you. Tisk, 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 maybe he is relying on his own spiritual stone. Another person pointed at Tududuo's feet and said, I just gave out spiritual stones to those children, but I forgot to put them away. Whether I have a spiritual stone or not, what does it have to do with you? Tududuo knew that these people were greedy, and secretly cursed himself for forgetting this. He quietly put the spirit stone into his storage bag, turned around and walked out of the woods. Tududuo, that's my spiritual stone. You stole my spiritual stone and still want to run away. Tudufa shouted and rushed towards Tududuo. Yours? In broad daylight, confusing right and wrong. How can you prove that this is your spiritual stone? Tududuo was furious. This was the hush money given to him by his seniors. Why are these people so shameless? Tududuo blocked Tududuo's retreat and sneered, then how do you prove that these spiritual stones are yours? We lost the spiritual stones, so we went to the woods to look for them, and we happened to find them. You just want to reject it for yourself? Aren't you afraid of the sex laws? Shameless, this is obviously my spiritual stone. Tududuo was about to explode with anger. He wanted to say that it was given by his senior, but his senior repeatedly warned him not to tell what happened today, so he swallowed it back. And this further fueled the arrogance of Tudufa and others. Tududuo, please be wise and return my spirit stone, otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. Tudufa clenched his fists, ready to take action. The sect has stipulated that no private fights are allowed. Do you want to violate the rules? Tududuo forced himself to calm down, trying to restrain them. Whenever he had the chance, he would duck out of the woods so that these people wouldn't dare to do anything on the road. Who said there was going to be a private fight? Tudufa has been hanging out with these pill-forming periods all year round, and has a tacit understanding. As soon as he finished speaking, the other people gathered around Tududuo, trying to push him to the ground and snatch his storage bag. Tududuo's two fists are hard to beat with four hands, and he cannot use magic. As long as it causes fluctuations in spiritual power during the fight, it will definitely be a capital crime. As a result, Tududuo could only watch as his storage bag was snatched away, and the dozens of remaining spirit stones were plundered. Humph, you know what I'm doing, and I want you to be good looking next time. Tudufa squatted down, looked at Tududuo who was pinned to the ground, patted the side of his face with a sarcastic face, and then walked away with everyone. After a long time, Tududuo came back to his senses, filled with anger. What is the purpose of my practice? Back then, I wanted to rely on my own cultivation to let my mother live a good life. But before that moment, my mother ran out of life and died. Later, I tried to keep those children alive as much as possible, but nothing happened. The children who should have been taken away still didn't come back. Cultivation to immortality, this is a waste of time to cultivate an immortal. Tududuo turned from anger to sadness, and his whole body was shaking. He felt like he was just a waste. Boom. Suddenly, the sky darkened, and at the same time a muffled thunder sounded. The heavy rain poured down, as if a hole had been poked by the muffled thunder. The cold raindrops patted the face that was not smeared too much, which also helped him regain some sense. No, we can't just let it go. I've had enough of just one breath of life. In terms of realm, they are no better than me, they are just the lackeys of the outer elders. Even if I die, I will still support a few people. Anyway, the senior seems to be interfering in this matter. I can't help you much, so I'll just kill a few moths. Mujiawa didn't know that his spiritual stone had some impact. At this time, he was looking at the heavy rain in the sky, feeling a little lost. Rain is not unusual. But such heavy rain in the spiritual world can be regarded as a kind of vision. I was born with a vision, Is a strange treasure born? Or is it that someone in the back mountain was inspired by cultivation? The heavy rain comes and goes quickly. The dark clouds dispersed and the sunset reappeared. On the top of the mountain in the distance, a rainbow bridge appeared in the sky. Occasionally, a spiritual bird flies by, bringing up a mist of water vapor, like a fairy spirit lingering around it. Mujiawa withdrew his gaze. This rare beauty made his depressed mood finally feel better. Let's start setting up the formation tomorrow. Na2Duo seems to have some ideas of his own. As for the formation, if the back mountain is not suitable, just go deep into the sect to set up the formation. He also had his own ideas. If he could set up a large formation there, he could stay away from the back mountain. Secondly, if the formation was triggered, maybe he could help those innocent girls and children. It can be regarded as doing everything humanly possible. A night of silence. The next day, early in the morning, the wood incarnation set out. According to the rules on the other side of the mountain, the children will start practicing in the early morning. During that time, deacons will go around the districts. Children who have practiced for a week can move freely. Those who do not practice well will need to continue practicing without even being able to eat. Therefore, if he goes to set up the formation at this time, he will not encounter too many people, which will help him bury the spiritual stones in advance. Mujiawa felt that the grove yesterday was good, so he decided to start there first. But, he didn't know that he saw a different Tutuduo. As soon as Mu transformed into the grove, he began to set up a large formation. What he wanted to do was to arrange this place as the main formation But he was only halfway through completing his plan when he heard the sounds of fighting coming from the east side of the mountain wall. He was suddenly stunned. In the Five Elements sect, private fights were not allowed. What? With his heart condensed, he used the wood escape technique to hide himself among the trees. When he came to the side of the grove, he immediately saw a familiar figure. Apply too much. Tutuduo, you are seeking death. The one who was beaten and the one who was at a disadvantage was Tutufa. His eyes were about to burst. He was not prepared enough, so he applied too much to suppress it. In the Den formation stage, the five spiritual powers can be combined into one, showing the gray color of chaotic power. But after all, they have never practiced the power of chaos, and this power is extremely weak in the eyes of the wood incarnation. Tutufa, either you will die today or I will live. Tutuduo was crazy and crazy. He was basically fighting for his life. He didn't care about his own losses at all. He combined the five spiritual powers into one and blasted at Tutufa as hard as he could. Although this is strong, it is also very expensive. If Tutufa cannot be held down here in one breath, then he will die when he is exhausted. Tutuduo didn't have the skills learned in each realm in the five elements of Chaos Sutra at all, but some ordinary spells. These spells are all the most basic changes in spiritual power. As long as you are not a fool, you can understand them yourself. This also confirms that Tutuduo told him that he practiced all by himself. But because of the mystery of the five elements of Chaos Sutra, the spiritual power of the five elements combined into one is extremely powerful. Coupled with the fact that he had the upper hand, it was very likely that Tutufa would be killed here. Mujiawa did not move. He wanted to wait for Tutuduo to deal with Tutufa, then show up again and ask what happened. But after a few breaths, when Tutufa could no longer hold on, he turned his hand and found several more spiritual stones. Using middle-grade spiritual stones during the Danshin period will simply give you an extra piece of spiritual power in your Danshin. In an instant, the battle situation turned around, and Tutufa took advantage of the surprise of the spirit stone to slap Tutuduo suddenly. Chaos Palm. Mushiwa's pupils shrank. How could he not recognize it? But why can't you apply Tutuduo, but can you apply Tufa? The Chaos Palm is so powerful. If this palm is used properly, it can seriously damage the nascent soul stage. Tu Duduo reacted very quickly. When he felt such a huge spiritual power coming, his expression changed drastically, and he quickly tried to dodge. But the Chaos Palm had a huge range, and Tu Duduo couldn't react in time. He was immediately hit in the side, and his left arm immediately turned into blood foam. Bang! At the same time, his body also fell heavily to the ground. Uncle Duo! Uncle Duo! Uncle Duo, I'll give you this spiritual stone. Some children quickly rushed out of the small courtyard on the side. Regardless of their mother's obstruction, they touched the spiritual stones and stuffed them into Tu's extra hands. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1204. Tu Duduo, you actually gave my spiritual stone to these little brats. Seeing this scene, Tu Defa's eyes flashed with greed. He didn't know where Tu's extra spiritual stones came from, but even these children had them, so why didn't he want to keep them for himself? This is a middle-grade spiritual stone. One stone can completely restore all his spiritual power. Anyway, Tu Duduo broke the rules first, and he could definitely kill Tu Duduo. In his eyes, these children are nothing more than ants. You fart. A mid-grade spiritual stone had been stuffed into Tu Duduo's hand, and the pure spiritual power immediately filled his empty dantian. Although he was missing an arm, Tu Duduo was willing to fight to the death and didn't care whether he died or not. It's alive. At the same time, the Chaos Palm also made him realize something. Isn't it just to condense all the chaotic power in the body into one palm? And he just had one palm left. Get out of my way. Tu Duduo roared angrily and quickly crushed the spirit stone in his hand. At the same time, he made a strange handprint with 5 fingers, and all the spiritual power in the spirit stone was used by him in the blink of an eye. With a flick of his wrist, he quickly formed a palm, which was exactly the same as Tu Defa's Chaos Palm. He actually learned Chaos Palm like this. The wooden incarnation hiding among the trees was also extremely surprised. Tu's extra talent seemed to be extremely strong. But why, just be a deacon here? While he was in shock and doubt, Tu Duan's palm hit the oncoming Tu Defa. Tu Defa was hit right in the face. No. No. Screams began, how come you know Chaos Palm? He was shocked and angry, and with a roar, his head was blown into powder. Death. He didn't understand until his death that Tu Duduo could actually learn the Chaos Palm that the elder personally taught to these close followers. It was said that only the inner disciples were qualified to learn it. Bang! Tu Defa's headless body suddenly fell to the ground, and the surrounding area became peaceful. Until Tu Duduo took off his strength and sat down, but his palms were already bloody. Mujiajia did not show up. Since Tu Duduo had already killed Tu Defa, there was no need for him to take action. However, this has obviously broken the rules here, and I don't know what the consequences will be. Uncle Duo, are you okay? The tall child asked again with concern. Tu Duo opened his eyes, forced himself to smile and said, it's okay, hurry up and hide in the house. I'm fighting with Tu Defa. There's a lot of noise. Maybe the elder will be attracted here. No, Uncle Duo. I want to stay here, I'm not afraid of anything. The big man had a determined look in his eyes. Uncle Duo, I'm not afraid either. That deacon is a bad guy and he just wanted to steal our spiritual stones. Yes, this spiritual stone was obviously given to me by Uncle Duo, but he confuses right and wrong and is a bad person. I'm not afraid even if the elders come, I don't believe that the elders will help bad people. Innocent words are actually the biggest joke. Tu Duduo lamented in his heart, but with a straight face, he said, just go back quickly, this is an adult matter. Do you want your mother to be sad? Hearing this, all the children looked towards their homes. Sure enough, weak and worried looks came from inside the door. For a moment, the children hesitated. "You guys go back quickly, Uncle Dui will be fine. If you stand here and let the elders know that I am so close to you, I'm afraid there will be other troubles, and then Uncle Dui will be punished." As soon as they heard this, the children stopped staying and left their respective spirit stones with Tuduoduo. Tuduoduo sighed, but did not refuse. After they all returned to the house, he stood up, pulled off Tudufa's storage bag, then carried his headless body and walked toward the woods. Before attracting other deacons or outer elders, he wanted to destroy the corpse and eliminate all traces, and then buy himself time to recover. When the time comes, one more person will be killed. Tududuo never thought that every move he made would be in the eyes of Mujiajia. Just when he put Tudufa's body down in the center of the grove, a familiar voice came to his ears. "Tududuo, why are you seeking death?" "Senior." Tududuo was startled and quickly looked up in the direction of the sound, but there was no one there and he didn't find anything. Could it be that I was too seriously injured and had hallucinations? Tududuo was stunned for a moment, shook his head, took out a spiritual sword from his storage bag and started digging. He didn't dare to use magic, for fear that his spiritual power would fluctuate and attract others. "Tududuo, since you know that your injury is serious, why don't you heal it first? Don't you have a spiritual stone?" "Senior." Tuduoduo was a little confused. The sound seemed to come from around him, but he didn't see anyone at all. "You don't have to look for me, I'm right here. Tell me, why did you start fighting with Tuda?" This is what Mujiajia wants to know. Private fighting was a capital crime, and Tududuo had fought to the death before, but now he was so cautious that he couldn't help but take a high look at Tuduoduo. "Senior," Tuduoduo said after confirming that it was the voice of the incarnation of Mu, "after you left yesterday, Tudufa happened to come with a group of deacons, found my spirit stone, and bluntly said that the spirit stone was his. The villain kept the senior's instructions in mind and did not dare to say that it was you who gave it to him. Without any explanation, he could only let Tudufa take the spirit stone. The villain was so angry that he had seen Tudufa alone before. To bully the children, I couldn't help but take action." Mujiawa was a little surprised that it had something to do with him. If he was telling the truth, it would be enough to show that Tuduoduo's behavior was somewhat similar to his own. However, he did not leave a way out for himself, but it did cause endless troubles. Even if Tudufa's body was destroyed and his traces were wiped out, it would still be impossible to conceal the truth. "Tududuo, if you want revenge, it's never too late in 10 years. You don't have to do it right there," Wooden Avatar said tentatively. Tududuo stiffened his hands and said with a wry smile, "Senior, I have seen clearly that staying in the Five Elements sect is the only difference between dying early and dying late. Instead of waiting to die, it is better to do something pleasurable. Tudufa and his ilk are always flattering. He is not the same person as the villain. If I don't kill him today, sooner or later they will kill me first. And the villain also dislikes the elders of the outer sect and will never do anything to help others. The decision is made." Having said this, Tududuo suddenly raised his head, his eyes full of determination. "A determined will to die? If you say." Mujiawa hesitated for a moment and said, "How can I make you immortal?" "What do you mean, senior?" I was shocked because I applied too much. If there is help from seniors from the inner sect, it is really possible to survive. He didn't know anything else, but at least he could feel that the aura given to him by Mu incarnation was far more powerful than that in the nascent soul stage. If the realm is one level higher, it can crush people to death. Tu's breathing became a little rapid. But before Mujiawa could explain, he shook his head again, which confused Mujiji. "What, you don't want to live?" "Senior, even if I can survive, it's of no use. A one-armed pill-forming stage will have no effect on the section and the villain has average talent. If he wants to be reborn after a severed limb, he can only cultivate to the nascent soul stage. But we are only in the late stage of pill formation, and even if our path to immortality goes smoothly, it may still take decades. Who said you have average talent? A flash of light flashed in the eyes of the wooden incarnation, almost penetrating the tree where he was. He was extremely sure that Tututuo would not be able to use the chaos palm. But after receiving a slap, he learned and applied it. With such understanding, if I help him, I'm afraid it won't be difficult at the nascent soul stage. Of course, the premise is that Mu incarnation can help him personally. Senior, if the villain's talent is not bad, how can he still be in the late stage of pill formation now? Tututuo asked boldly. Let me ask you something. Mu incarnation finally emerged from the tree, walked quietly to Tututuo, and said with a faint smile, you told me yesterday that all the methods of cultivation were discovered by yourself. And Tu Defa and the others must have received guidance from the outer sect elders. Just like that, your realm is no weaker than Tu Defa's. Why do you think your talent is weaker? Tu Defa opened his mouth and looked at the sudden appearance of the wooden incarnation, but said nothing. Senior is senior, and he didn't even notice such mysterious magic. Also, have you learned or seen the palm you used to kill Tu Defa before? Tu Defa shook his head, but he somewhat understood what Mujiajia meant. That's Chaos Palm, a technique that can be learned during the foundation building period in the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra. Do you know how long I had been learning it at that time? Having said this, Tu Defa became a little excited. Mujiawa smiled slightly and said, due to the sex rules, I will not speak for you. I can only give you a chance to survive. If you can survive, then I can give you a good fortune. Tututuo was not aware of Mu's attitude, so he immediately fell to his knees and cried bitterly, Tututuo will stay in the 5 elements sect and serve the 5 elements sect even to the death. Wrong, wrong. Mujiawa shook his head, and Tututuo also raised his head, with a puzzled look on his face. I don't want you to work for the 5 elements sect, I want you to work for me. Mujiawa made a decision in his heart. In the huge 5 elements sect, it is extremely difficult for one person to do things alone. But if Tututuo is used as a chess piece, there may be unexpected gains. Although he had the intention of taking advantage, if Tututuo could really survive, he wouldn't mind giving Tututuo Dui a blessing. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1205. Senior, what should I do? Also, I am worried about those children. Mujiawa laughed and said, of course you can't go back here. You started fighting with Tuda, and everyone there saw it. You should worry about your own problems. But there are no buts, Mujiawa interrupted him and said, first of all, even if you stay, you can't change the fate of those children. Secondly, do you think everyone there will help you hide the facts? Paper, yes, you can't keep them from getting angry. Only if you follow my arrangements can you save them. Senior, please speak. Tututuo lowered his head, how could he not know? I just hope that the wood incarnation can use the power of the inner gate, maybe just one sentence is enough. But what he doesn't know is that Mujiajia is an imposter, and he won't let himself stand out and lead to danger. Even if he wants to help Tu Defa, he wants to help those girls and children. But we still need to think about it in the long term. Do you know where the Medicine Valley is? Wooden Avatar said calmly. Tututuo shook his head and said, I've heard of Medicine Valley, but I've never been there. Tu Defa and the others never take me there. Mujiawa expected this and said, I'll take you to Medicine Valley, it's very safe there. The pharmacist is dead. At least for a month, Tututuo will not be disturbed by anyone. Unless those great tribulation masters pass by, it can only be said that Tu Duduo's life is in danger. Everything must be obeyed by seniors. Tu Duduo lowered his head and followed behind Mu's avatar. The two of them walked around many roads, walked out of the other side of the grove, and turned into the valley. The pharmacist is dead, and there is no one else in the medicine valley except Xiaohisa. Xiaohisa was an ordinary child in the qi refining stage, and Mujiajia ordered him to stay in the medicine valley. Even if he wants to figure it out, he can only break through the 9-turn 9-yang formation set up by Mu Incarnation. An hour later, the two came to the medicine valley, and Mu Incarnation introduced him into it and said, "During this period, you can wait here to practice and recuperate. I will come over to see you when I have time." "Yes, senior." On the way here, Mujiawa had already taken out some pills and handed them to him, all of which were taken from the pharmacist's storage bag. He didn't say much else. After sending the people there, he left the medicine valley. The East District is destined to be uneasy, but Mujiajia does not want to and cannot participate in it. At least after Tu Duduo disappeared, there wouldn't be any noise here. Even if the outer sect elders were furious, no one could be found. In Huishan Cave Mansion, Mujiajing was thinking about how to arrange Tu Duduo to become a useful chess piece. Of course, the changing heaven and earth talisman must be used, and at the same time, it also requires extra coordination. It can be seen from his counter-attack against Tu Defa that Tu Duduo is a man who is calm in times of crisis and extremely capable. Well, as long as it is arranged properly, applying excess can definitely play a huge role. At the outer gate, with his heaven-changing talisman, no one would be able to see it. The only question is whether Tu Duduo will cooperate with him wholeheartedly. It seems that his injuries have almost recovered. The broken arm is not a big problem. I can kill a deacon, then transform him into the other party's appearance and let him blend in. Then the biggest one in the outer sect, the hidden danger, is the elder of the outer section. After I deal with him, the outer sect of the 5 elements sect will be under my control. In this way, even if I cannot lure Xianxia to the Balian sect, I will still have the opportunity to lure him to the Balian sect in the future. Kill. The biggest problem at the moment is the tribulation ancestor who is hiding somewhere. Although Xianxia's problem is urgent, at least it won't be a problem to solve it before the Ascension secret realm opens. After thinking about it, Mu Incarnation decided to teach Tu Duduo the spells before the pill formation period so that he could act more conveniently. After all, he will be leaving in half a month at most. But before that, try to clear all obstacles for unnecessary application as much as possible. Go look over there. An hour later, the wooden incarnation came to the medicine valley again. With the elixir and spirit stone, Tu Duduo was back to normal, except for one missing arm, but he was not discouraged at all. "Senior." Tu Duduo bowed and saluted, and then shouted to behind him, "Little Hisa, why don't you come and see your senior?" Meet senior." Xiao Hisa was still a little cowed, but he didn't dare to disobey Tu's unnecessary words. He came up carefully and called out softly. Mujiawa was a little surprised. When he first met Xiao Hisa was only at the 2nd level of qi refining. But only a few days have passed, and Xiao Hisa has reached the 4th heaven. Is this little Hisa's talent also so terrifying? But why is he one of those children in the East District who are very slow in practicing? Otherwise, he wouldn't have been captured by Tu Defa and others and brought here. "Senior," Tu Duduo was shrewd and immediately explained, "I had nothing to do, so I took Xiao Hisa to practice. I hope senior will forgive me." It's okay." Mujiawa waved his hand. "Xiao Hisa will stay in the medicine valley for the time being anyway, just practice." He smiled and said, "I have something to explain to you today. What do you think of the rest? How much do you know about the deacon? And how much do you know about the elder?" "Senior, except for me, the other deacons in the outer sect are trying to curry favor with the elders of the outer section. Their words, although I disdain to associate with them, I am still very familiar with them. Tu Duyu told the situation of the other Jindan stages one by one, and Mu Huashan also had a target in mind. A late Jindan stage named Tu Mo Kang. It's good to be familiar with him, Mu Huashan nodded and said, next I have to go to work, and I will also teach you a few spells. You should practice well, they will definitely come in handy in the future. Thank you, senior. When he heard that there was a spell to learn, Tu Duyu was so excited that he not only knelt down himself, but also pulled Xiao Hiza next to him to kneel down together. Mu Huashan chuckled, he first repeated the key points of Chaos Palm, and then passed all the Thunder Escape and 5 Elements Escape to Tu Duyu. Although the 5 Elements Escape technique is not a skill in the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra, it complements the 5 spiritual roots, and Tu Duyu has benefited a lot. If Tu Duyu's impersonation of Tu Mo Keng is exposed, he may be able to escape. Thank you, senior, thank you, senior. Tu Duyu already knew what Mu Huashan meant, which was to keep him alive as much as possible. Don't thank me first, Mu Huashan said lightly, you should practice the 5 Elements Escape technique first, and the Thunder Escape technique can be slower, remember. I will remember the teachings of the senior. Well, Mu Huashan turned and walked outside. As soon as he reached the door, he said, even if you die, you can't tell where this escape technique came from. Otherwise. I know. If someone catches me and wants to search my soul, I will definitely self-destruct first and will never expose the senior. Very good. Mu Huashan smiled slightly and left quietly. All he wanted was Tu Duyu's attitude. Even if others know about it, what does it matter? The 5 Elements Escape technique is not a skill in the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra, and he is not Tu Chang, so who can know it? Besides, he will leave the 5 Elements sect in a few days, and he doesn't know when he will come back next time. After leaving Medicine Valley, Wood Incarnation planned to go to the South District. Tu Duyu told him that Tu Mo Keng was mainly responsible for patrolling the South District. This time, he didn't kill Tu Mo Keng directly, but to see the situation first. He also had to practice magic for Tu Duyu, and he could make preparations at the same time. Although it was not a risky move to act like this in the 5 Elements sect, if he was not careful, all his efforts would be wasted. He had temporarily cancelled the plan to set up the formation. There was an accident in the East District, and there was Tu Defa's body in the grove. If the outer sect elders found out about it, he would also be exposed. An hour later, Wood Incarnation appeared in the South District. Compared with the East District, the South District was not much different. Except for the women here, they are older and more charming. According to the rules of the outer sect, this is a female cultivator who has been planning for more than 10 years since the first birth. At the same time, the realm of these female cultivators is mostly above the 6th level of chi refining. On the contrary, the ordinary cultivation of those children is also higher than that of the children in the East District. There are even some who are above the 6th level and can fly with flying tools. It was noon at this time, and no one was practicing in the small courtyard. Instead, there were some half-grown children chasing and playing in the air. If he hadn't known the situation here from Tu Duyu, he would definitely not think there would be any problems here. Mu Huashan was still hiding in a big tree, observing quietly. Gradually, the smoke from cooking rose, and the smell of rice came. There were constantly female cultivators walking into the yard and shouting at the sky. One after another, figures fell from the sky, with all kinds of magic tools, and there were many. But they all had one thing in common, that is, these magic tools were extremely crude. Even worse than what Mu Huashan had refined himself back then. Soon, there was no figure in the sky. Mu Huashan glanced over and found a problem. All the children in the southern area were boys, not a single girl. Was it a coincidence, or did Tu let something slip? At this moment, a figure staggered from the road on the edge of the mountain wall, and every time he passed a small courtyard, he would stick his head in to take a look. At the same time, there was an obscene smile on his face. Wherever he was, the small courtyard would suddenly become quiet, and at the same time, Muhwashan could feel that the atmosphere seemed out of place with the surroundings. Muhwashan's face gradually turned cold. How could he not know that this was Tu Mokang? Lustful, this is the label Tu gave him. Obviously, he can do whatever he wants here. Like choosing a concubine, Tu Mokang walked into a small courtyard, and then a half-grown boy was driven out. A moment later, a strange sound came from the small courtyard, without any cover, and it spread to the small courtyard next to it. But the others seemed to have not heard it, as if they were used to it. Yes, this kind of scene that can be seen frequently has made them numb. Today it is this courtyard, maybe yesterday, or tomorrow, it will be someone else. Muhwashan sighed and waited quietly for a moment until Tu Mokang staggered out of the courtyard, straightening his clothes as he walked. In the courtyard, the iron pot was still steaming. After he left completely, the boy who was driven out returned to his own courtyard, got a bowl of rice, walked to the door and squatted down, silently filling his stomach. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzwan Xianxia. Chapter 1206. With Tu Mokang's departure, the mountain wall gradually became lively. Apparently, these children only need to practice in the morning and can move freely in the afternoon. Just like before, they all sacrificed their own crude magic tools and flew away. In this outer gate, it seems that their freedom is unlimited. Except for leaving the Five Elements sect. The wood incarnation has been observing the boy whose mother was insulted, but unfortunately, after he had dinner, there was nothing unusual. Not long after, he joined the children who were flying and playing. For a long time, the wood incarnation felt that he would not find anything if he stayed any longer, so he left quietly. He had already recognized Tu Mokang, so he only needed to go back and make a simple plan, and then he could start to act. The next day, early morning. Plans cannot keep up with changes. A sudden heavy rain prevented the wood incarnation from going out. It was not that he was afraid of getting wet in the rain. As a god transformation stage, he had countless ways to avoid the rain. But the problem is that in this kind of weather, I don't think Tu Mokang will go to the South District to have fun. Wood incarnation had to give up and stay in the cave, waiting for the rain to stop. But who would have thought that the rain would last for a whole day and night? It was not until the morning of the second day that the rain became slightly lighter. It's strange. I have never encountered heavy rain in the spiritual world for so long. How come it has rained twice in just a few days in the Five Elements sect? If only one rain was considered bad weather. Then the second stronger rain was enough to show that this was definitely not normal weather. Of course it was someone who did it. So who was it and what was the purpose? What can be confirmed is that this rain must have been caused by a great man in the back mountain. But firstly, I have never felt anything strange about the spiritual power in the air, and secondly, there is no such spell in the Five Elements Chaos Sutra, or the spell that causes such anomalies. Faintly, wood incarnation had a bad feeling. Facing the unknown, he always used to be reserved. The rain stopped at noon. As soon as the rain stopped, the dark clouds quickly dispersed. The sun was high in the sky, and the gurgling water on the ground slowly receded. The wood incarnation walked to the entrance of the cave and looked towards the center of the back mountain. He had never gone deep into the back mountain and didn't know what was inside. He had also asked Tu Gong about it, but Tu Gong said that the Five Elements sect had strict levels of realms. For example, people of his realm could only move around the periphery of the back mountain and didn't know what was inside. Sometimes even the sect master had to be notified before entering. It's better to have less trouble than more. Let's go to the South District first. If there is a chance, we should act early. If we are late, I'm afraid something will happen. The wood incarnation used the breaking void spirit eye technique to scan the area. After finding nothing else, he set off towards the outer gate. When he came to the South District again, the sky was clear, but it might be affected by the heavy rain. Although it was past noon, there were no children playing and laughing in the air. After a moment of silence, the wood incarnation walked towards Tu Mo Keng's courtyard. At the same time, he carefully released his spiritual sense to search and soon determined Tu Mo Keng's location. In the entire outer sect, the strongest is only in the nascent soul stage. As long as he does not make a big fuss, he will generally not be discovered. After walking about 2 miles along the mountain wall, a 2-story wooden building appeared in the eyes of the wood incarnation. After confirming that Tu Mo Keng was alone in the house, the wood incarnation took advantage of the cover of the grove and casually drew an invisible talisman to hide his figure, and then stepped into the yard of the wooden building. The wooden building is not spacious, but it is the most prominent existence among this row of mountain walls. The small courtyard is similar to other wooden houses. The only difference is that there are no pots and pans in the courtyard. Tu Mo Keng is already in the Jindan stage and does not need to eat like those women and boys. He stepped into the main house with his footsteps. Just as the wood incarnation's eyes were on the stairs, footsteps were heard outside the house. His heart sank, and he quickly hid to one side. When he looked at the door again, he found that several other Jindan stage deacons had come. He frowned slightly, and just watched them rush upstairs with serious faces. The stairs creaked when they were stepped on, as if they might collapse at any time, but they didn't care, which meant that they came here for something important. Mo Keng, why are you still sleeping? The elder is furious. A Jindan stage deacon walked into Tu Mo Keng's bedroom and said in a deep voice. The elder is furious every other day, making a fuss. What happened this time? Is it because Tu Defa died and Tu Du ran away? Tu Mo Keng's lazy voice sounded, and he didn't seem to worry about the elder's anger. If it were that simple, it would be easy to handle. Tu Du's disappearance could be a big deal, after all, he was in the Jindan stage. In addition, there is Tu Defa, who died and his body could not be found. Our outer sect is now short of 2 deacons, and the inner sect elders have already asked about it. What, inner sect elders? There was a thump from upstairs, and it should be Tu Mo Keng standing up from the bed onto the floor. The wood incarnation was also surprised. Would the inner sect ask about the outer sect? If so, it would ruin his plan. To be honest, he didn't know enough about the Five Elements sect, so he could only wait and see, hiding quietly in a corner, listening to the Jindan stage elders upstairs continue to talk. Yes, the elder of the inner gate. I happened to be following the elder, and then an elder came from the inner gate and said that he sensed that there was a fight in our outer gate, so he asked the elder what happened. The elder was afraid of the elder of the inner gate, so he said that it was caused by Tu Defa and Tu Du's magic. The elder of the inner gate asked the elder to hand over the 2 people, but it rained all day, and no one could be found in the entire outer gate. Now the elder called us to go to him. Yes, we just received the news. Isn't it right to pass by you on the way to the North District? Didn't you see your sound transmission jade plate in the South District? Tu Mo Keng stretched out his hand, and a round jade plate on a small square table beside the bed flew directly onto his palm without wind. After carefully feeling it, Tu Mo Keng's face changed drastically, and it was obvious that he had received the news inside. Go quickly. If you go late, it will be miserable. The elder was angry, and they would suffer the consequences. How could Tu Mokeng dare to stay here? Go, go, go. A group of people came and went quickly. They walked down the stairs quickly and didn't notice the existence of the wood incarnation at all. When these people left the wooden building, the wood incarnation pondered, the inner sect asked about this matter, and they went to the North District. Although it disrupted his plan, if he could adapt to the situation, it might not be a bad thing for him. He could follow them, but the problem was, the inner sect elders who came. Is he in the nascent soul stage, or the God transformation stage? Or refining void stage? Just in case, I know where the North District is. If the other party is in the nascent soul stage, even if it is the God transformation stage, it's okay. I'm afraid of the refining void stage. It happened that there was no one here, so the wood incarnation removed the invisibility talisman and took out the spirit stone from the storage bag. He first used 9 spirit stones to set up the 9 transformations 9 yang formation, and then set up 10 self-destruct formations in the formation. Finally, he set up a spirit-inducing formation. If the void refining stage chased him, he wouldn't mind letting him taste the power of the self-destruct array and smash him to pieces. If the outer gate was in chaos, it might attract the attention of the inner gate to some extent, so that he could move better. At that time, it might be easier to attract a few tribulation ancestors to the Balian sect. After doing all this, the wood incarnation redrew the invisibility talisman, but this time he added an additional breath-retaining talisman, and finally used the power of his body to take the Changshengju step, following the path in front of the wooden house and running towards the North District. When passing through the West District, the wood incarnation saw a completely different scene again. To be precise, the girls who were rarely seen in the East District and the girls who had never been seen in the South District were everywhere in the West District. He even took a closer look and found that there was no boy here. Among these girls, there were babies who were babbling and were still held in their arms. There were also toddlers who were standing unsteadily in walkers. Most of them wore pigtails and played in groups on the roadside. A small number of them, like the boys in the previous 2 districts, were flying in the air and having a lot of fun. It seems that Tutuyu is not clear about the situation of the outer gate. The South District and the West District are not exactly the same as what he said. The wood incarnation was in a hurry to go to the North District and did not stay in the West District. He just felt a little strange and bypassed the West District. After leaving the West District and running another 5 or 6 miles, he arrived at the North District. This time, he was amazed again. I thought that the 4 major districts of the outer gate were arranged according to the direction, and they were all small wooden houses built on the mountain. But the North District was like a city. It was also close to the mountain wall, but the city wall was expanded. There was only one entrance, and there were 2 Jindan stage guards guarding the door. The wood incarnation pinched his fingers and found that he came from the East District and went around to the North District, but it was farther away from the back mountain. Strange. Shaking his head, the wood incarnation was not in a hurry to enter the city gate. From a distance, from the faces of the 2 Jindan stage, it seems that the current situation is not optimistic. They frowned, and the hands holding the magic tools twitched unconsciously. They paced back and forth. It seems that the pressure on the outer sect elders is very great now. At this time, in the center of the northern district of the city, there is a 3-story wooden roof. You disappoint me. You should know how many people are eyeing the outer sect. Just send 1 child to the Medicine Valley every month, and you can get a lot of contributions from the sect. But this elder wants 2 Jindan stage, and you can't find them in more than a day. A cultivator in the Liangsu stage, facing the direction outside the city, with his back to a Yuanying stage, kneeling on the ground, trembling. And behind him, there are also several Jindan stage kneeling, they are 2 Mokeng and others who hurried over. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzwan Xianxia. Chapter 1207. Elder Jingsu, this disciple is guilty. This outer sect elder is named Tu Qingyang. Back then, he was the follower of Elder Jingsu, so he could become the elder of the outer sect, and he was like a local emperor. However, the rules of the Five Elements sect are very strict. There was a fight, but the initiator could not be found. Although Elder Jingsu is Elder Liangsu, it happens to be his turn to be responsible for managing the law enforcement hall. Originally, the recent events within the sect had made him feel very unhappy. In addition, Xianxia had given an order just a few days ago, telling them not to worry about other things besides the normal operation of the sect, and that they could only practice with peace of mind. Who would have thought that he was at the critical moment of breakthrough? If he successfully passed through it, he would be able to achieve the integration stage. He would not have to worry about the mundane affairs in the sect at all, and would only need to wait patiently until the secret realm of ascension opens. As a result, Tu Qingyang did this to himself. The outer sect, judging from these two words alone, seems to be the least valued part of the sect. But these veteran strong men of the Five Elements sect know that this is almost the basis for the survival of the Five Elements sect. Although, many five spirit root disciples will be eliminated naturally every year, and those who are even more unlucky will be sent to the Medicine Valley as children to be refined into unusual five spirit pills. But as long as one child stands out, it will be beneficial to the Five Elements sect without any harm. Convicted? It's not as simple as confessing. Elder Jinsu spoke indifferently, as if he had nothing to do with Tu Qingyang. As soon as he finished speaking, one of Tu Yinjiang's arms shattered in response. Hiss. Tu Qingyang could only clench his teeth and take a breath due to the severe pain and the blood foam spreading in front of his eyes. He didn't dare to scream. If he screams, I'm afraid it will be his throat that will be shattered next time. I bought you some time. You have heard about the recent events in the sect. In these troubled times, at least before the Ascension secret realm opens, you can't make any more mistakes. Otherwise, even I can't protect you. I have bought you 7 days for a broken arm. If you can hand those two people over to the law enforcement hall within 7 days, you can heal your injuries and regenerate the broken arm. Then there will be no news from this outer section. It's time to change someone. You know, there are too many Yuanying elders in the sect who don't want to lead people to practice, but want to come here to be the Earth Emperor. There is only one person in the nascent soul stage of the outer sect who is responsible for the daily management here. As for the rest of the nascent soul stage, you should bring some qualified pill-forming stages to practice. It is conceivable that teaching people to preach is a tiring task, and the tasks are heavy. They have no time to practice on their own. Unless a nascent soul stage can be brought out, then he can become an inner sect elder and take on some relatively easy responsibilities within the sect. Only then will you have time to practice. In contrast, this outer sect has a lot of time to practice. Who wouldn't be jealous of this place? You know, Jinsu also practiced directly from the outer sect elder to the god transformation stage, and finally got the sect's important use, and then practiced all the way to the refining stage, and became the Back Mountain Elder. Thank you, Elder Jingsu. Tu Qingyang leaned on the ground, extremely respectful. Humph, just take care of yourself. From today on, you have nothing to do with me. Zhu Ran's ruthless words made Tu Qingyang smile bitterly in his heart, but he also knew that there was nothing he could do about it. Elder Jingsu is also afraid of being implicated and thus attracting public attention. After he left, Tu Qingyang turned over and sat directly on the ground, then took out a pill from his arms and drank it, which stopped the bleeding wound. Elder, why do you? Tu Mokeng stepped forward tremblingly. Why don't I resist, huh? Tu Qingyang gave him a cold look. 3 realms apart, how could he possibly feel Elder Jingsu's realm? In fact, they don't even know Elder Jingsu. Perhaps, in their eyes, he is the most powerful existence. Little did he know that in the eyes of these great masters, he was like an ant in the 4 districts of the southeast and northwest. Tu Mokeng didn't speak, but his eyes confirmed what he said. Next time, keep your eyes open and take a look. Elder Jingsu is in the stage of refining the void. Tu Qinjiang's face showed sarcasm, and he looked at Tu Mokeng, and the expressions of the rest of the Danja period froze. Sit in the well and look at the sky. Don't blame them. This is the sect's rule. Their outer sect deacons are not allowed to leave the outer sect's scope. And those who are qualified to leave are only those with extraordinary talents, who will be allowed to see the outside scene, and will be assigned to guard the gate of the sect. The purpose of doing this is also to make these disciples look familiar and get to know other inner sect elders of the sect. Those with less talent will naturally follow the rest of the nascent soul stage to practice day after day. Tu Mokeng and others are the least talented, so they stay here as deacons. Regardless of whether they are inferior to one person, they are superior to 10,000 people. But only for the outer door. Only during the inner sex pill-forming period, if someone gives birth to a baby and a spot becomes vacant, they will fill the vacancy. And this North District is the entire outer sect, where all the foundation building monks gather, so that's why Tu Qingyang is stationed here. This matter needs to be considered in the long run. Tu Qingyang ignored the reactions of Tu Mokeng and others, and ordered, 7 days, not too much, not too little. I think Elder Jingsu is actually reminding us that many people in the inner sect are paying attention to this place. So when you act recently, remember to avoid strangers. Yes, Elder. The Jindan stage bowed in response. Tu Qingyang said again, in addition, do you have any strategy to solve this crisis? If anyone can let this elder get through it safely, then this northern district, let him choose a female cultivator. Hearing this, all the Jindan stage eyes lit up. Their lives are boring, and they are not people who practice hard. So naturally, the kind of dual cultivation is what they like most. Although Tu Mokeng is the most lustful one, it does not mean that the other deacons are not interested in women. The most important thing is that Tu Qingyang is also a person of this section. The most beautiful female cultivators in the entire outer sect are in the North District. Among them, there are some female cultivators in the Jindan stage who are hidden by him. For a while, the breathing of these Jindan stage cultivators became a little rapid. Outside the city, the wood incarnation was about to sneak into the North District, but he never thought that a gray light suddenly passed over the city wall. The overwhelming aura made him stagnate and he stopped in his tracks. Liangsu stage. It's really Liangsu stage. He was stunned. He thought that this outer sect would not be noticed by the inner sect. And he made preparations just to be on the safe side. It was his habit. But he didn't expect that there would really be Liangsu stage. He once followed Zhang Daozun to the edge of the Savage Sea and met Wu Xing Sanren with 3 Liangsu stage cultivators. So, he was very familiar with the aura of Liangsu stage cultivators who were also from the 5 Elements sect. He couldn't have seen it wrong. Holding his breath, Mu Huashan's mind was spinning rapidly, and he had already made the worst plan. Because he knew that if the Liangsu period's spiritual consciousness was slightly scanned, he would immediately see through his invisibility talisman. Now he could only be thankful that he used an extra breath-suppressing talisman. Otherwise, if he took one more breath, he would be discovered by this Liangsu period immediately. After the gray-white light rushed out of the range of the city wall, it did not continue to fly, but landed on the ground and chose to walk away. Tu Gong told him the rules of the 5 Elements sect. Unless there is something important, you cannot fly or teleport in the sect. Mu Huashan's place is the only way to leave the North District. Therefore, at most one stick of incense, he will run into Jingsu head-on. Even if Jingsu does not use spiritual consciousness, but the realm of Liangsu period is there, maybe he will sense that there is someone here. At that time, he will use spiritual consciousness again, but it will be just a matter of convenience. There is no expression on Jinxu's face, and he walks step by step indifferently. But as he got closer and closer to him, the wood incarnation became more and more nervous. No, if I get any closer, I won't have a chance, I will be exposed sooner or later. It's better for me to show up earlier than to be too late to escape. The wood incarnation forced himself to calm down, and his heart became calm. In just a moment, he came up with a way to deal with it. Just like when he encountered a strong enemy before, he delayed time to buy himself a chance to escape. Not far behind him was a grove. As long as he entered the grove, he could use the wood escape technique to leave. By then, even if Elder Xianxia was strong, it would not be so easy for him to find him. Just as the wood incarnation made the decision to show up and escape, an accident happened. Jinxu suddenly stopped, and at the same time he slowly raised his head and looked up at the sky. The wood incarnation was slightly stunned, and immediately stopped moving. What is he looking at? He raised his head carefully and looked in the direction of Elder Jinxu's gaze. Suddenly, his face changed. At some point, dark clouds rolled in from afar in the sky. However, it was still far away, so it did not block the light. In addition, the mind of the wood incarnation was not here, so naturally he would not notice anything. But at this time, it seemed that it was going to rain again. The dark clouds came quickly, but in the blink of an eye, they had already connected into a large area. The entire North District was like night. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that a few words with Tu Qingyang would cause me to inexplicably trigger strange phenomena again. Jinsu laughed loudly, and then kept pinching the magic formula in his hand. A series of majestic chaotic forces changed through his fingers and turned into light blue water spirit power and rushed towards the black clouds. Voila! A moment later, it rained heavily. Just like the two heavy rains that the wood incarnation encountered before, it came very suddenly. Is it the strange phenomenon caused by him? Is he going to break through, or is this some kind of magic in the Five Elements Chaos Sutra? The wood incarnation didn't have time to think about it, he knew this was his best chance to escape. He suddenly poured spiritual power into his legs, and his figure suddenly appeared in the heavy rain. Snap! 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 The bean-sized raindrops hit his face and hurt him, but the wood incarnation didn't care too much and used his body skills to run towards the grove. Naturally, he was discovered by Jinsu. Huh? There is a god transformation stage here, why didn't this elder find it? Since when did the god transformation stage also want to get involved in the outer sect? Jinsu's eyes condensed, looking at the background of the wood incarnation, with a hint of sneer at the corner of his mouth. Under this elder's power, you will have nowhere to hide wherever the rain falls. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1208. Every raindrop is transformed by spiritual power, and at the same time, it also carries Jinxu's spiritual consciousness. Even though the body of the wooden incarnation is agile and still under the influence of the invisibility talisman, the body still exists after all. Any abnormality in the falling raindrops will appear in Jinxu's soul. Except for the unrecognizable face of the wooden incarnation, there is no trace of his figure. Something happened in our Five Elements sect recently, but it's not to the point where anyone can sneak into it. I would like to see who this person is who is so bold. Jinsu sneered, and moved his steps slightly. He seemed to be moving slowly, but he actually took dozens of steps in one step. Shrink into an inch. Mujiawa's heart was filled with fear, and he did not dare to slow down at all. He gritted his teeth as he looked at the small woods not far in front of him. Hearing the footsteps getting closer and closer behind him, he did not look back, for fear that his turning back would affect his footwork. Even if it only delays 1/10,000th of a breath. Hurry, hurry. The closer the footsteps are, the closer the woods are. As long as he can touch any plant, he can use the wood escape technique to escape into it. By then, the raindrops will no longer be able to detect his presence. Boy, why don't you stop? Do you think you can escape this elder's pursuit by taking shelter in the woods? The smile on Elder Jinsu's face became even bigger. He had been practicing in the sect and had not been out for a long time, and it was difficult to fight against others. Although this time was overwhelming and stress-free for him, it also allowed him to find fun. Cat and mouse game fun. However, he never thought that because of his carelessness, he would give Mujiawa a chance to escape. Finally, 1 foot of the incarnation of wood stepped on a tree root that was protruding from the ground. Wood escape technique. The invisibility talisman and breath-containing talisman were instantly ineffective, and the figure and spiritual power of the wooden incarnation appeared instantly, but in just an instant, he escaped into the tree. Countless raindrops hit the tree, and there was no trace of the tree incarnation. Huh! Not far away, Jinsu's figure suddenly froze, his face full of disbelief. Where are people? He withdrew his spiritual consciousness from the rain, broke away from the control of this vision, and poured all his spiritual consciousness into the grove. After a moment, he couldn't believe it. A god transformation stage person disappeared under his nose. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. He was breathing rapidly, staring, and let the raindrops pat randomly on his face. This vision of rain started because of him. Originally, through this rain, he could feel the changing laws of heaven and earth. After understanding something from it, he could immediately break through to the integration stage. But because of the sudden appearance of Mu incarnation, there was a trace of distracting thoughts in his Taoist heart. I thought that I could quickly resolve the wood incarnation and continue to experience this heavy rain phenomenon. But the result was unexpected. The rain may stop at any time. If I don't realize this time, I don't know when it will come again next time. For a moment, Jinsu felt angry in his heart. Since I hid in this forest, I will destroy this forest. As the elder of the inner sect in charge of the outer sect, he has absolute power, and no one will ask how the forest is doing. This is something he knows very well. Compared to his own realm, a forest is nothing. Break it open for me. He turned his hand, and a gray-white spiritual power immediately emerged, even affecting the rain. But Jinsu couldn't care so much and punched out directly. It turned out to be Chaos Fist. 24 paths of Chaos Fist, the last one, eternal silence. The surrounding temperature dropped rapidly, and when countless raindrops fell, they were condensed into thousands of ice cones by the cold air. Aha! 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 The ice pick penetrated the leaves and stuck on the trunk, making layer upon layer of sounds. Within a moment, some younger trees were riddled with holes and collapsed. The wood avatar, who was using the wood escape technique, had already seen this scene, and was greatly shocked when he saw Jinsu using the Chaos Fist. At the realm of the void refining stage, the power of this broken Chaos Fist is so amazing that it can even affect the phenomena of heaven and earth. And one thing also allowed him to confirm, that only the inner sect of the Five Elements sect can learn the real Five Elements Chaos Sutra, which is the same technique as him. Otherwise, how could there be Chaos Fist? The wood transformation knew that he could not stay here any longer. With the addition of the rain, the move of Wanchengji was extremely powerful. If all the trees were destroyed and no grass could grow, then he would also lose his hiding place. As long as he is discovered by Jinsu, he will definitely die. And the rain has enveloped the entire grove. As long as you are within the scope of the rain and escape from the trees, you will be unable to use the wood escape technique. But at the moment, he has not come up with a new method. He can only stay away from Jinsu as much as possible to buy some time for himself. But returning to the East District is obviously impossible. South District. Suddenly, an idea came into Mujiwa's mind. Not only had he set up a dragnet in the Southern District, but the 10 self-destruction arrays arranged with medium-grade spiritual stones could definitely hurt Jinsu. If he breaks through to the integration stage, he may not be sure. Fight. The wood incarnation was also filled with murderous intent. If he could kill Jinsu, it would certainly cause the sect to move. At that time, it might be helpful for him to place Tu Du as a chess piece. It is not said that wealth and honor are sought in danger, just because he was forced into a desperate situation. The wood incarnation had already made a decision while flying along the trees. After a stick of incense, he left the small forest here, and was only a few miles away from the South District. At the same time, his figure appeared and was discovered by Jinsu. Good boy, such a mysterious escape technique. A refining void stage, was not careful, and you ran away. Jinxu's spiritual consciousness discovered something, and he quickly locked his soul on the wood incarnation. However, he was still controlling the Wanzhong silence. In order to ensure that the ice cone continued, he also needed to release spiritual power all the time. Therefore, he did not catch up at the first time, but slowly withdrew his spiritual power, and waited until the rain returned to normal before chasing closely. But this was enough for the wood incarnation to escape back to the South District. Humph, this elder's Yuan Shen has locked on you. Even if you turn into ash, you can't escape. Jinsu felt that he was more careful than before and would never be careless again. Indeed, there has never been a low-level cultivator in the world who escaped the lock of a high-level cultivator, not to mention that he is a person who has half a foot in the fusion stage. After finding out that the wood incarnation went to the south area through the feedback of the Yuan Shen, Jinsu couldn't help but feel a little confused. I thought that the other party was a person from outside the sect, who sneaked into the outer gate of the sect with weaker protection to do something wrong. In theory, after being discovered, it should be a normal reaction to run outside the sect. But why did he run to the south area? Could it be that it was also done by an elder of the inner gate? Jinsu carefully searched his mind for the elders who had conflicts with him, but he didn't find any. Forget it, there's nothing to think about. I just need to catch that guy and then ask him some questions. If I find something, I might be able to make a great contribution and get the favor of some seniors in the deeper part of the back mountain. Then I can enter the fusion stage more smoothly. Jinsu narrowed his eyes, and his soul immediately felt the wood incarnation jump into the two-story building. Although he was nominally in charge of the entire outer gate, because the elders of the outer gate were there, he would only contact Tu Qingyang even if he had something to do. To be honest, he had never been to a place outside the northern area of the outer gate. But at least, he found the difference between this two-story tree and other wooden houses between the mountain walls. The rain was still heavy, and there was no one on the road. Both the children and the female cultivators were hiding in their homes and did not appear. So no one noticed the arrival of the wood incarnation or the appearance of Jinsu. Perhaps, someone felt the change of spiritual power. But the female cultivators have long been accustomed to minding their own business. Boy, will you be okay if you hide in this room? When he heard Jinsu's voice coming from the small courtyard, Mu Huashan's heart was in his throat. In order to lure Jinsu in, he had already opened the gate of the 9 transformations 9 suns formation, which had no protective effect. I'm not afraid that Jinsu won't come in, I'm afraid that Jinsu won't come. After hearing Jinsu's voice, Mu Huashan pretended to be flustered and stepped heavily on the stairs to run up to the second floor. Dong! 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 The footsteps showed Mu Huashan's panic. Of course, all this was imagined by Jinsu himself. In this way, he relaxed his vigilance, and at the same time spread his soul in, rushing straight to the second floor. There was no one in the small building, and Jinsu walked into the main hall on the first floor with a grim smile on his face. Mu Huashan took a deep breath and suddenly pinched the formation formula. Instantly, 9 middle-grade spirit stones suddenly lit up, and the formation pattern emerged in an instant. The gate closed, And the room was bright? Jinsu looked up and looked at the 9 suns with a little surprise. But that was all. I thought you had some tricks, but it turned out to be just a method to break the formation. The 9 transformations of the wood avatar was just a simplified version. Before Jinsu's realm, it could be said that it had no offensive effect. And the wood avatar did not intend to use the 9 transformations of the 9 suns to cause any threat. 9 spirit stones, the attack power is insufficient, but if used for sound insulation, it's more than enough. The wood avatar heard the contempt in Jinsu's words, and his heart was immediately settled. I'm not afraid of anything else, I'm afraid you're too careful. He let out a long breath, and then shouted on the second floor, why are you chasing me? Chasing you? Jinsu was beaten up, and couldn't help but be stunned. Yes, why am I chasing him? Boy, it's obviously you who are shameless, you used some kind of invisibility method, and suddenly ran away after seeing this elder. Tell me, why did this elder chase you? Jinsu's eyes were full of anger. If this person was an outer disciple of his sect, he would not live. Because it seems like he is being played with. How can I, a dignified void refining stage, be played with by others? Without waiting for the wood incarnation to answer his question, Jinsu took a step forward, and the spiritual power surged again, the wind under his feet, and the spiritual power also spread around. There is no doubt that this will activate the spirit attracting formation. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1209. The arrangement of the spirit-inducing array of the wood avatar is very clever. As long as there is spiritual power, it will be affected immediately. And once the spirit-inducing array moves, it will trigger 10 self-destructing arrays. This kind of array is connected, and the wood avatar is perfect. Everything comes from the memory of the main body. There have been several battles with cultivators who are higher than his realm using the self-destructing array. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is easy to capture. Feeling the stimulation of the spirit-inducing array, the wood avatar also fiercely pinched the array formula in his hand. The 9 suns that Jinsu saw came down with a bang and smashed over fiercely. Boy, your array is indeed mysterious, but it is still a little naive to deal with me. Dare to attack this elder? He. The grinning Jinsu told the truth, but he didn't know that the wood avatar urged the 9-turn-9 yang array to attack, just to cover up the movement when the self-destructing array was just activated. At the same time, after he controlled the 9 suns to attack one after another, he had already decided to get away. Boom. 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 9 suns came one after another. Jinsu defeated them with one palm each. He didn't even need to use magic or moves. He could defeat them directly. When the 3rd sun was shattered, the wood incarnation had already escaped from the formation, stepped into the rain, and fled far away. If 10 self-destruct formations exploded at the same time, the spiritual power would be restricted in the 9 transformations and 9 suns formation, which would be extremely powerful. He didn't know if Jinsu could survive, but at least, there would be a lot of noise. This time, if you don't die, you will be seriously injured. I'd better run back to the back mountain first, for fear that the noise will be too loud and will attract other cultivators in the back mountain. The wood incarnation's eyes flashed with brilliance. Without looking back, he disappeared in the rain. When Jinsu completely destroyed the 9 suns, he realized that he had ignored the position of the wood incarnation and let him run away again. Boy, you are so good. He praised and wanted to smash the 9 transformations 9 suns formation with Chaos Fist. His realm was more than enough to break it with force. But what he didn't expect was that countless spiritual powers with extremely terrifying auras were constantly surging from all directions and suppressing him. In an instant, all the spiritual powers rolled him into the center, surrounded by enemies on all sides. Not good. Jinsu's expression froze. As a 5 spiritual root, he felt the 5 kinds of spiritual power, which were not only chaotic but also violent and boundless. Why is the spiritual power here unbalanced? Jinsu's Yuan Shen felt the distance of the wood incarnation at this time. He thought that since he was locked in anyway, he was not in a hurry to run to where he could run for a while, so he should get out of here first. It must be said that Jinsu's strength is so strong that he is still not panicked in the center of this surging spiritual power. He is still thinking about breaking the formation. Unfortunately, when he poured out his spiritual power, he intensified the violent explosion of the power of the 10 self-destruct arrays. In less than a breath of time, all the spiritual power exploded. Boom! The wooden house was completely destroyed, and the flames shot up into the sky. The chaotic spiritual power returned to one direction at the last moment, raising countless sawdust and dust to meet the heavy rain. Not to mention the collapse of the sky and the crack of the earth, but a huge gap was also blown out of the mountain wall next to it. Countless rubble rolled down and collapsed many wooden houses. Forced to survive, the female cultivators ran out with their children in fear. I have lived here for dozens of years and have never seen this mountain collapse. The gap has been filled with large and small stones, and there is no trace of the 2-story wooden building. There is even a faint smell of blood. A stream of bright red blood merged into the puddles on the ground, and then flowed to the lower place and dispersed again. In the distance, the back mountain. Several powerful men suddenly opened their eyes. Jinsu has fallen. The one who spoke was a Mahayana stage. As soon as the words fell, several Mahayana stage masters suddenly appeared in front of him. Isn't Jinsu about to reach the fusion stage? The 3 recent heavy rains were all caused by him. A Mahayana stage master frowned and said, "Looking at our cultivation of the 5 elements Chaos Sutra, it is actually the least dangerous from the refining void stage to the fusion stage. Jinsu has a good talent and should not fall at this threshold." What Elder Changfen means is, someone attacked Jinsu. It's just this possibility. Let's go to the place where he fell and see if we can find some clues. Listening to the direction of the movement, it should be in the outer gate. The outer gate is full of ants trapped in the circle. Even if all the people in the outer gate unite, they can't hurt Jinsu's finger. If you want to go, you go. Why disturb my cultivation for a refining void stage? Chengnan, if the ancestor Sanren is still there, it's not our turn to take care of it. But the ancestor Sanren fell in Tianweishan, and the sect is controlled by a monster Xianxia. In addition, several ancestors in the back mountain are planning to show up. If we don't take care of it, I'm afraid we won't be able to practice in the future. Chenfeng's turbid eyes suddenly showed murderous intent, as if he would take action immediately if Chen Neng disagreed. Chen Neng was reluctant, but when he heard Changfen mention Xianxia and the ancestors who were in seclusion, he was helpless. He felt very aggrieved that he was in the Grand Hall stage. And the reason why he didn't want to go was because Xianxia could threaten him, so he held his breath and cultivated to the tribulation stage. By then, even if the hidden ancestors showed up, he would have a say. But at the moment, there was no way. Changfen had the most seniority, so he had to listen to him. Then go quickly and come back quickly. Chen Neng looked away and spoke calmly, as if nothing had happened just now. The wind has stopped and the rain has stopped. It can be confirmed that Jinsu has really fallen. Does any of you know whether he has left any incarnation? Changfen looked at the golden light that suddenly shone outside the cave and said, in the distance, there was a rainbow bridge floating in the sky. The sect does not advocate the practice of the 5 elements transformation technique, so most people in the transformation stage will not practice it, and the void refining stage is no exception. Another Mahayana said. There was silence again in the cave. Ordinary monks can condense their incarnations after they have reached the stage of spiritual transformation. But the monks of Five Elements sect are in a special situation. To practice incarnation, there is only the Five Elements incarnation technique. In other words, they need spiritual beads to condense their incarnations, just like Zuyun. But to condense an incarnation, you need a spiritual bead. There are not many spirit beads in the spiritual world, let alone collecting 5 elements to condense them. And the meaning of existence of an incarnation is just one incarnation. What can help with cultivation is that only 5 of them can be cultivated at the same time. Finally, they will be fused back when they break through the integration stage, breaking through in one fell swoop, which greatly improves the success rate. Therefore, even if they want to condense the spirit form, they will be fully prepared during the tribulation period. When triggering the catastrophe, the 5 incarnations are quickly combined into one, and finally integrated into the body, soaring to the fairy world in the strongest posture. In fact, the 5 elements Senran prepared 5 spirit beads early, but they never condensed them into incarnations because he felt that the time had not come yet. But who would have thought that he was beaten to death by Yayuan with a hammer and his soul was wiped out? All the resources and treasures hidden in his ring also disappeared and were lost in the turbulent flow of space. But then again, some careful monks, after obtaining a spiritual bead outside, did condense an incarnation in their spare time. The 5 elements incarnation technique is somewhat useless, that is, if the main body dies, then the incarnation can continue to practice like an ordinary monk and save its life. Only. In that case, the 5 spiritual roots will no longer exist. But it would be good to be able to save one life, and it is also a single type spiritual root, and there is even a chance to cultivate into a spiritual body. The 5 elements sect is extremely domineering in the spiritual world, and I am afraid no one will think that this is the case. Therefore, there are basically not many people from the 5 elements sect who have condensed their incarnations. Instead of doing this, it is better to condense the spiritual beads into the 5 internal organs, which is equivalent to having an extra danshan to store spiritual power. In the cave, there was silence for a moment, and Elder Changfeng said again, "Let's go. If this matter is resolved, I still think we can take out the spirit beads and let them condense the 5 incarnations first. In order to avoid being like the Sanren ancestor. Like, he was suddenly beaten to death by Yayuan. It's easy to say," Chen Neng continued, "but who should condense the 5 incarnations first? After all, 5 spirit beads are not a small number. This matter, after the wrong Jingsu incident is over, we should sit down and discuss it carefully. We have passed the stage of fighting spirit, and we still need to support each other to avoid tragedies like the ancestors of Sanren." Changfeng glanced at Chen Neng indifferently, seemingly not taking his rude words to heart. Also, at their level, it is indeed as he said, what is there to be angry and aggressive about? At the stage of transcending the tribulation, it is possible to trigger the heavenly tribulation to ascend at any time. Everyone stopped talking, and within a moment, they appeared in the southern area of the outer gate. On the path, countless boys and girls were kneeling on the ground. The old man who has returned to his original nature and has no breath appears here. Apart from the powerful giant of the inner gate, there is no possibility. They simply couldn't believe that they would be able to see powerful men above nascent soul in their lifetime, and they didn't know what realm they were in. Changfeng and others turned a blind eye. A Mahayana sage retracted his spiritual consciousness and said, "Jinsu died inside, but the strange thing is that it doesn't seem like he has not passed the threshold of breaking through the integration stage, it is more like he was killed." Kill? The only ones who can kill Jinsu and escape unharmed are the few little ones in the integration stage, right? But those few little ones are in seclusion and have not come out. Changfeng was slightly stunned. And those who were kneeling on the ground were extremely shocked to hear that they were referring to the combined period as children. In this way, they are most likely to be in the Mahayana stage. Oh my God! From what I see, Chen Neng stood up and said with his eyes on the ruins, it's possible that he was also in the stage of refining the void, and he was jealous of Jin Su, so he killed him when he triggered the sudden enlightenment of the wind and rain. Refining the void period. Chang Feng looked calm and asked, do you know how many stages of refining the void are left in our sect? What is their realm? Chen Neng frowned. Chang Feng, what do you mean? Do you want to test me? Don't dare. Chang Feng sneered, the ancestors of Sanren took away Tianxu and Kongguxu, plus the dead Jingxu. None of the others have reached a state beyond the middle stage of Suringxu. Hearing this, Chen Yan's expression changed. Chang Feng was not giving any face at all. If it's in front of a large group of Mahayana disciples, then that's it. But not far away, there are some ants in the chi refining stage and foundation building stage. A nameless resentment arises spontaneously. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1210. But Chang Feng is in the Mahayana stage after all, so he still has some restraint. If the anger is vented because of this, the other Mahayana disciples will definitely side with Chang Feng, which will be extremely detrimental to him. But the dissatisfaction still arises from this. Chen Nan, Chang Feng remained calm and said without even looking at Chen Nan, so now, the only possibility is that someone has sneaked into our Five Elements sect. Even, the strength is not weak. As soon as these words came out, the rest of the Mahayana period were shocked. Does anyone in their Five Elements sect dare to sneak in? Chang Feng, where will it be? Another person stood up and said, everyone knew where he was referring to, where this person was hiding. It can't be the back mountain. In addition to us in the back mountain, the tribulation ancestors also want to leave the seclusion. But it can't be the outer gate. Chang Feng sighed and said, let's go see if Xianxia is there first. You mean, maybe it was Xianxia who moved his hand. When talking about Xianxia, several people were filled with reluctance. They thought they were in the Mahayana stage, but Xianxia was in the nascent soul stage and was restricted in everything. And they also got the news that after Xianxia returned from Tianweishan, she had already reached the stage of becoming a god. Her soul method originally restricted them, but now in this state, I'm afraid. It's really possible. Then it is possible that Xianxia herself was a member of the outside sect who got in. They didn't know much about Xianxia's origins. They only knew that the sect master picked it up and then became a Taoist couple. Then the sect leader suddenly died suddenly, leaving behind his last words to pass the title of sect leader to Xianxia. At first, they didn't take care of things and didn't care much about who was in charge of the Five Elements sect, as long as it didn't affect their cultivation. But who would have thought that Xianxia, who was in the nascent soul stage, would dare to come to them, and even reveal his mysterious and boundless soul skills. Even though their souls are powerful, they are unable to deal with Xianxia's soul method. Fortunately, Xianxia knew how to advance and retreat, which saved them enough face. Otherwise, they would have fought with Xianxia long ago. But if Jinsu's death was really Xianxia's fault, then this woman's ambition is clearly revealed. The agreement to only make them do one thing a year is a delaying measure. Several Mahayana disciples couldn't help but think like this. They really couldn't find anyone who could quietly sneak into the sect and kill Jinsu. But whether this is the case, we still need to see if Xianxia is in the sect master's palace. Several people moved very quickly and appeared outside the sect master's hall not long after. Without the need for Yuan Shen's induction, he knew that several nascent soul stages were pacing back and forth in the sect master's hall. Take the lead in pushing the door open. Who dares to break into the sect master's palace without permission? Several nascent soul stagers suddenly turned their heads, but their expressions also changed accordingly. Thump. I've met the Supreme Elder. in unison. They never imagined that the almost invisible Mahayana disciples in the back mountain would come here together. Is it to accuse the sect leader, or does he have other agenda? But no matter what, they can only choose to see the gift. Get up, Chang Feng waved his hand and asked, where is the sect master? Back to the Supreme Elder, the sect master has not come out for a long time after entering the Holy Land. He should be practicing there. A nascent soul said tremblingly. Although they only have nascent soul, they are also the deacons of the inner sect, and they have somewhat heard about what happened in the inner sect and the back mountain. In the Holy Land? How long? Chen Feng's brows frowned instantly. If this was the case, it meant that all his previous guesses were wrong. Could it be that there are really outsiders who dare to sneak into the Five Elements sect? After returning from Tianweishan, we entered the Holy Land. We stayed here because we also wanted to report something to the sect master, but the sect master never came out. This nascent soul stage answer shocked Chang Feng, because there was no need for Xianxia to hide from these people. This shows that he was wrong about everything. Okay, you go and guard outside the palace. Chang Feng waved his hand, bringing up a spiritual wind, lifting up all the Yuanying stages and moving them outside the hall. Then, the door of the sect master's palace automatically closed tightly without any wind. Chang Feng, do you want to enter the Holy Land? Chen Neng said angrily. Although the sect's rules are not very effective for them, the Holy Land has always been under the control of the sect leader, and it is the main place for cultivation by the monks in the Dan formation stage and nascent soul stage. Only after the stage of transformation into gods, will they move to the back mountain, slowly hand over the sect's duties, and concentrate on cultivation. If Wuxing Sanren hadn't suddenly died in Tianweishan, Chang Feng and the others wouldn't have been able to intervene in the minor matters within the sect. Therefore, it is really inappropriate to enter the Holy Land rashly. But Chang Feng no longer wanted to speculate. He said in a deep voice, not only do I want to go in, but I also want to ask you all to go in with me and ask Xianxia what he wants to do. And, the one who sneaked into the section outsiders, does it have anything to do with him? Chen Neng had a feeling of dissatisfaction in his heart, so he naturally refused and said, if you want to come in, I won't come in. Chen Neng, what do you mean? A Mahayana dissatisfied man said. Captain, when do you need to force me to go there when you are doing something? Do I have to go to meet the sect master? Chang Feng gave him a cold look. Chen Neng, we are the only ones in the sect who are in the Mahayana stage to step forward. If you don't go, I'm afraid Xianxia will laugh at you. The driver's words resonated with several other Mahayana practitioners, and they all criticized Chen Neng for destroying their unity. But Chen Neng remained unmoved and walked towards the outside of the hall with his back turned to everyone's gaze. What does it prove if I see the sect master or not? I might as well go practice while I have this time. From what I see, Jin Su's death was just an accident. He was thinking in his mind that if outsiders from the sect really sneaked in, they would be able to cause any kind of battles, and it would be impossible to deal with them all in the Mahayana period. With such strength, he can now walk sideways in the entire spiritual world. Generally speaking, during the tribulation period, people have long stopped caring about worldly affairs and are unwilling to take action. They were just afraid that their attack would be too strong, which would trigger a catastrophe and make them unprepared to deal with it. Therefore, he is not afraid of anyone coming at all. It's just right, you can sing the opposite tune to Chang Feng, so you don't have to come to him to act together on everything, which affects your cultivation. Forget it, he won't go, let's go. After Chang Feng watched Chen Neng leave, he stopped everyone and said, I'll go in first, and you will come later. Of course, if anyone doesn't want to go with me, they can leave now. This is an ultimatum. If we want to break up, then part ways now. Chang Feng, what are you talking about? If we don't go, We will follow Chen Nang. The driver immediately expressed his stance, and the others nodded. Ha ha ha, be polite first and then attack, the ugly words come first. Chang Feng strode forward and reached the first seat of the hall. There was a screen there, and the fragment of the Diwu glazed mirror was placed on a stone table behind the screen. There are so many powerful people in the Five Elements section. Even if the Five Elements sect is still alive, this fragment will still be placed here. No one would think of rejecting this fragment as their own. Those with low realms are not strong enough. Those with high realms are no longer needed. Zuyun did not expect that this fragment could be easily taken away. The fragments are ownerless things and have never been refined. Therefore, if Chang Feng wants to enter, he only needs to pour his soul into them. After he entered the fragmented space, the other Mahayana stages followed suit. If several spiritual consciousnesses from the Mahayana stage are injected at the same time, accidents may occur. After all, their soul power is too strong. This is also the reason why they entered one after another. In the space, on the school field, Xianxia was surrounded by golden light. If you look carefully, you can still see the golden light rising from the brow, flowing around the body, and finally ending at the brow. It seems to be the movement of heaven during the time of refining qi. However, the movement of spiritual power starts from Danshan, but the golden light of Xianxia starts from Zifu. Feeling someone coming in front of her, Xianxia opened her eyes suddenly, and the golden light quickly converged from her eyes. Elder Chang Feng, why did you suddenly come to this holy land? Xianxia naturally recognized the strongest person that Huishan had ever seen, and his words were somewhat polite. She was also afraid that the other party would rather live in pieces than live in ruins. Sect Master, Chang Feng, and the other Supreme Elders are here to visit us. Please ask the Sect Master to stay for a moment while the other disciples will be here soon. Chang Feng is neither humble nor arrogant, but he doesn't have any contempt either. Ordinary as usual. After the words fell, the driver appeared. Sect Master, I haven't seen you for a long time, and my strength has improved a lot. It's really gratifying. The driver had a smile on his face. True and false. Elder driver, you're welcome and safe. Xianxia smiles but doesn't smile. Her city is very deep, and with so many Mahayana coming, she has to prepare for the worst. Previously, they were only in the nascent soul stage. While I used my soul method to suppress them, I also had to give them a way out. But now she was transformed into a god, and her self-confidence was extremely swollen. What's more, in this holy land, no one knows that this school ground has become her home court. Practicing here not only allows her to practice faster in less time because of the difference in time flow. It's even more because his soul power is growing extremely fast. It is far from comparable to the outside world. This is why, as soon as she came back, it was as if she was in seclusion. She didn't ask about the sex affairs and chose to enter the Holy Land. But she didn't even know. The source of this golden light is inseparable from Zuyun.